Hello, everybody, and welcome in to another great week of college football. This is College Football Week number 10, and you are listening and watching to the Line Movers Network College Football Podcast. Thank you again for joining us. Please follow along on all social media platforms, Twitter at _LM Network. We have our YouTube channel, the Line Movers Network YouTube channel. And follow us along. We'd love to hear the interaction back and forth, what you like, what you don't like. So follow along. We also, on our website, too, now have all this cool merch, as the cool kids say. We have these great T-shirts. You can see all the guys wearing them. Welcome in tonight to my college football experts, Tyler Liddick, Ian Robbins. I'm David Dorman for the Line Movers Network. Hi, boys.
What's going on?
Hey, David. Hey, Tyler. Exciting weekend. Exciting weekend to review. Exciting time. Exciting about ahead of us in college football.
Yeah, I get to come back for the lame schedule this week. You guys substitute me in when Trey's sick.
Yeah, we gotta get you in for some different kind of talk, not the game breakdown so much.
Since you're here, Tyler, we're going to bring you in for a discussion here. We're going to have some college football talk tonight before we break down the big games of the weekend. Let's discuss in college athletics, not just football, but also basketball, letdown spots, letdown situations. You see it all the time in football and basketball, most notably. Teams getting up for a big rival. Teams getting up for a conference foe ranked in the top 5 nationally, getting to bring those teams into your home stadium. And then we see in weeks following that, these teams don't even look like the same team. They completely fall apart. My biggest example this year, although we could mention many, was the Iowa at Purdue game. Iowa had just come off that thrilling, crazy victory over Penn State at home. Then they go to West Lafayette, take on Purdue. They couldn't score. They couldn't move the ball. The defense looked terrible. Tyler, Ian, do you believe in letdown spots in college athletics? And how do you see it playing out? We'll go to Tyler first.
Yeah, so I guess it's like a mental thing within a team. They get kind of high on their horse. They don't practice as hard. They don't prepare as well. Maybe they're looking ahead. It did happen to Iowa right after that big win against Penn State, but I think Iowa's proven that they're not that good of a football team offensively since then. It's happened to Penn State right after the Iowa game with the look-ahead spot. I know it wasn't a letdown spot, but it was more of a look-ahead spot with that game against Ohio State for Penn State, I think. But I think it's really important to mention this with college basketball coming up, and importantly with college basketball coming up is the opening season tournaments. We oftentimes see someone run through those the Maui Invitational or another tournament like that early. They win the tournament and then they go home for their first conference game and lay an egg as a favorite because they came off the tournament high hopes. I know it's happened in past couple of years. Michigan won last year, came off as a huge favorite conference game, ended up losing. So something to keep your eye on. Don't get too high in the teams in these early invitational tournaments. But also in college football, always look for a letdown spot. Look ahead at the schedule. Who's next on schedule? Who's on deck? Who are they preparing for? And the reason why is maybe they're scripting their game plan as in they're playing the team that's next week, and it just couldn't go well against the team they're playing this week. So it's always a betting opportunity. And here with the Line Movers, we like to discuss these every single week and hopefully get on the right side of them. That's obviously the objective. And if you can't find the right side, it's probably best to stay away.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to look at these in college games specifically. We're talking about college kids, 18 and 22-year-olds, 18 to 23-year-olds this year. It happens a little bit in the NFL, but with colleges, you're talking about rivalries. You're talking about top teams, top brand names, kids looking ahead, maybe not their total focus. It's just a different level, a different mentality, different mindset. it's easy for a kid at Penn State to be excited to play in Iowa in a top 5 matchup. It's easy for them to be excited to go to the Horseshoe to take on Ohio State in a primetime game. It's not very easy for them to go play an 11 a.m. kickoff at Illinois local time in the middle of the day, right between those spots. Let's call it a sandwich spot, maybe a flat spot, maybe Penn State, with that eye peeking forward. And another way to look at a letdown spot, especially with college basketball as well, is a lot of times you see games or teams that are heavy underdogs play really, really high up to competition, and they can't replicate that performance the next week. You'll see a lot of times with some smaller conferences in college basketball, every team who has Gonzaga on deck, and they want to make their name. Can we beat Gonzaga? Can we beat Gonzaga? They'll play out of their mind, try to keep it within 10 versus Gonzaga, and maybe hit a large percentage of their shots, and then the next week they end up losing, or the next game they end up losing by 20. You're like, well, they just played Gonzaga to overtime. How'd they lose by 20 there? And that's a definite letdown spot. We just saw that with an example this week with Kansas. Kansas is a terrible team, but they played Oklahoma toe-to-toe. And I think that everything that Kansas had was in that game. Everything for their season was in that game. Every plan, every trick, every outlook was into that game. And they really went hard for it. And Kansas went to the wire with Oklahoma. The next week, they get run out the stadium by Oklahoma State. And they just can't level up. You're like, well, how did Kansas just play with Oklahoma and now lose by 50 plus points to Oklahoma State? They just can't replicate that performance. And we might have seen that a little bit in the NFL, which is rare, but I think you saw that if you watched the Detroit Lions versus Los Angeles Rams game, when you had Jared Goff, Matthew Stafford, a lot of emotion in that game, and the Lions going with a lot of trick plays, a lot of going for it in odd situations, fake punts, fake special teams. You see a lot of that playing their hearts out, keeping the Rams within 9 points, and then the next week they get blown out by 30 plus points against Philadelphia, barely can score a touchdown with their starters in. They can't score a touchdown with their starters in, just total flat spot. Definitely a letdown. Playing high emotion. You watch a game, you see, well, they just pulled out all the stops. Look for them to back where everything went right for them. Look for things to go wrong the next week. So if you keep close eye on some questionable results one week, look to maybe fade that team the next week.
Great points, guys. And exactly to what you were saying, these are kids. These are 18, 20, 21-year-old kids, and these are long seasons. Football, 12 games, might not sound long. It's a long season. College basketball, even longer, 30, 35, 38 games. These kids cannot be up for every game. There are definitely letdown spots after your big national TV game, after ESPN's come to town, after CBS, the SEC on CBS, there's spots these coaches can't have these kids up for every game. To your points, I couldn't agree more. Moving along. Tonight, earlier, the College Football Committee decided to bless us with their rankings. Let's discuss a little, but I'm going to rank them. I'm going to read them off here. To no one's surprise, Georgia, numero uno. Number 2, to my surprise, was Alabama. I know they only have one loss. They're sitting at 7-1, but I didn't think they'd be in the 2-hole. 3, Michigan State, Sparty, straight off their upset win at home against the Wolverines, took the 3 spot this evening. The Oregon Ducks sitting at 7-1 with probably the most impressive victory of the season in Ohio State. Oregon sits at 4. Speaking of Ohio State, they're at 5. They're sitting at 7-1. The only loss, like we just mentioned, was to the Oregon Ducks. 6, break my heart. I'm not even a Cincinnati fan, but it just does not bode well when Cincinnati has done everything they could have so far. They're sitting at 8-0. They beat Notre Dame on the road. They scheduled the Big Ten team, Indiana, on the road. They got that done. They've done everything they were supposed to. And the committee said, 6th. 7, we'll go a little quicker here. 7 was Michigan. 8 was Oklahoma. 9 was an undefeated Wake Forest at 8-0. And to round out the top 10 is Notre Dame. Give me your overall thoughts here, Ian. What'd you think came out right? What did they get wrong?
Well, the one thing they got right off the bat, Georgia's number 1. That we knew coming in. I think Michigan State was expected to be in the top 4, coming off that win over Michigan, top 10 win, undefeated. I think Michigan State's going to show their true colors in the coming weeks. They still have their biggest, they're not one of their biggest games, but big games ahead of them. Penn State, Ohio State. I think that will kind of sort itself out. They did the right thing, keeping Oregon ahead of Ohio State. I was curious to see if they were going to take Ohio State, bump them over Oregon, which would have been just crazy, but kept that there. So gave Oregon a nice line. And I think one thing that might go overlooked, because Cincinnati is low, but one thing I do like about the rankings here is that you got Cincinnati ahead of an undefeated Oklahoma team and undefeated Wake Forest team. You could have easily seen, and you've seen in the past, that maybe Cincinnati is behind that Oklahoma team, name brand alone, but Oklahoma hasn't been impressive as an undefeated team. That haven't had big wins. They got their big games ahead of them still. And at least Cincinnati still has a little bit of a path. Things got to happen for them. I'm really curious to see where the Alabama being 2 kind of comes into play. Their loss isn't the best loss, I don't think. Ohio State maybe has the best loss because they lost to Oregon. Alabama lost to Texas A&M, which is a good team, but not as highly ranked. And, they have that inevitable SEC matchup with Georgia. Maybe it's protecting Georgia a little bit, saying Georgia maybe has a little leeway if they lose that game and maybe get two SEC teams in there. But I think they did a couple things right early on. We still got a month of these rankings. Things are going to shake themselves out, sort themselves out. A lot of interesting things ahead of us. But I do like those little pieces, little things within it. Wake Forest having a chance at 9, ahead of Notre Dame at least. Oklahoma being down. We see that, and Cincinnati being ahead of Oklahoma, I think, is definitely a positive for sure. And Oregon being ahead of Ohio State with that head-to-head victory. So a lot of things to shake out. I do appreciate those positives in there.
Tyler, what did you see on the rankings this evening?
Yeah, obviously a little heartbreak for Cincinnati and Cincinnati fans, not losing a game and who knows how long, except for that game to Georgia last year, the comeback Georgia put on them. It was kind of, I don't know, it was what's expected. Oregon ahead of Ohio State. A little surprised by the Michigan State ranking just because of their schedule before the game against Michigan was kind of weak. As if you look back now, yeah, they're all Big Ten games, but none of those teams are doing too well. Indiana, they played Indiana close, and Indiana's a 2-6 team that's not very good. I don't really have anything to say negatively about the rankings. Questionable Alabama at 2, but they're setting up the 1-2 matchup for the SEC championship. And if Alabama loses, that'll be their second loss. I don't see them getting in with 2 losses over maybe an undefeated Cincinnati and an undefeated Wake Forest at that point in time. So you're going to put a 2-loss Alabama team in? Probably not. Oklahoma's got a long road ahead of them. I don't know that they're better than the teams that they still have to face, and their ranking at 8 is pretty much the committee telling them that they don't believe they're good enough to make the playoff, because they've been going down in the ranking for the last couple of weeks and winning ball games. So when you're in a major conference and you're sliding in the rankings and winning ball games, that doesn't mean good things. So they clearly don't favor Oklahoma. And that means Cincinnati right now is in their favor, but I don't think Cincinnati's doing themselves any favors. We discussed it earlier. They're not blowing teams out. That the Navy game was a tricky game, obviously, with the way that the Air Force or the way the academies play offense, but I still think that that's inexcusable. They should have been up by 14-21 at half. Either way, the Notre Dame game, they probably could have won by more. Don't think Notre Dame's that good either, but Georgia's the best team in the nation. And I think Georgia's probably going to win it this year, because if they beat Alabama in SEC championship and knock Alabama out of the college football playoff, I don't think there's anyone on Georgia's level.
I hear exactly what both of you are saying and screaming. It just, I guess, befuddles me that Cincinnati could do everything they were asked to, and then right out of the gates, to me, I feel like the committee sends messages in the first few ones more than they do rankings, but it's just a slight to Cincinnati that they're not one of the 4 slotted playoff teams. There's so many more games to play. A lot of these teams are going to knock each other out, but I do think they knock Cincinnati down for no reason. But Tyler's points are very, very valid. And now these other big boy teams, big power conference teams are going to start to play other big boys, and Cincinnati is not. So we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, it's going to come down. It's really exciting last couple of weeks because the big teams, there's big games coming up. The Big 12 is going to get decided out with the big boys, the powers, Iowa, the Oklahoma's, Oklahoma State's, Baylor's, Iowa State's. They're all playing each other. Michigan State, Ohio State, they still have to play each other. Penn State was kind of worked in there a little bit. Oregon still have a trip to Utah. They could have a big rivalry game with Oregon State. They're going to have the Pac-12 championship game. There's still going to be a lot of games to sort each other out. Alabama and Georgia kind of coast until the last week. We say that, but there's always potential for a trip here and there. Notre Dame kind of sitting at 10 is good for Cincinnati ultimately if they keep winning and other teams fall. 1-2 loss teams. If Michigan gets another loss, they're going to fall out of the top 10. So a lot of movement can still happen. Wake Forest, we don't know what they are. They still got some big games coming up that we'll talk about. Michigan State, I know Tyler was talking, he's not too high on Michigan State. I'm not too either. We'll see what happens. They're going to be able to prove it. Cincinnati is going to sit with that last impression. It's going to be their biggest game. It's going to be likely Houston after Houston got that win over SMU in the conference championship game. Should be a top 20 team. That's going to be a statement chance. That's going to be a chance to really put either a good taste or a bad taste and hope that some things happen. You got to hope for an Ohio State, Oregon mishap because those two teams with the head-to-head makes things very tricky one way or the other.
And to your point, Ian, besides the SEC title game where we're going to probably get Georgia and Alabama, the other power conferences might have some teams that aren't so highly regarded. Where, as you just mentioned, Cincinnati's going to get a very good, solid Houston team who might come in with one loss. So I do agree with you. Cincinnati could get points there, while the big boys might get knocked down a little because of who they're playing. We will see. Again, please follow along with us, all your sports on Twitter and all social media networks. On Twitter at @the_LM Network. We have an awesome, great new website. Please follow us along, www.thelinemovers.net. And that's where you can buy all your cool merchandise, like the T-shirts the guys and I are wearing tonight. Once again, with my college football experts, Tyler Liddick, Ian Robbins, I'm David Dorman. Tonight, as we move along in the show, we are not going to have rapid fire with the schedule this week. We're going to go with 4 featured games. We're going to start in the ACC on Tobacco Road. Wake Forest, undefeated Wake Forest, and in the top 10 of this committee's rankings this evening, is going down to Chapel Hill to face North Carolina. Carolina opened as a 4.5-point favorite. The public's on Wake Forest here. The line's now down to 2.5. A high total of 76.5. Tyler, let's go to you first.
Probably would have been very interesting to see what this line would have been at the beginning of the year, a look ahead line, because if you think about it at the beginning of the year, these teams were probably flip-flopped in everybody's view of opinion on where they would finish and what they would be doing throughout the year. Most people expected UNC to challenge Clemson for the ACC championship. And here it's Wake Forest's ACC to win. So I guess, you have the ranked Wake Forest team against UNC. Sam Hartman's playing some great ball. They can throw it around. They've scored 115 points in their last 2 games. They held Duke to 7 points, garbage time touchdown. Duke's not a very good team. Army scored 45 points on them, though. So, and that was just a war of attrition. Wake Forest just could score more points than Army. Army had to punt the ball a couple of times, and Wake Forest did not stop scoring. They got 677 yards of offense, I think, in that game, maybe a couple more, if I'm not mistaken. So with that being said, I really think Wake Forest is the better team. I don't think that UNC's offense is as high powered as what we thought they were. Sam Howell's still a great quarterback, but I think Wake Forest is a better team. And I think they're tough situation here, tough spot for them with, pressure starting to mount. expectations starting to rise, top 10 ranking for the first time and who knows how long. Also, it's great for the Wake Forest program, great for the ACC to see teams in the top 10 other than Clemson. But we were wrong about Kenny Pickett. If you're still looking for Heisman tickets, Sam Hartman's trending upwards. But I think Wake Forest is a better team here. And -2.5 points, I would take Wake Forest.
Very good. Demon Deacons at the Tar Heels. Ian.
It's crazy game ahead of us. That total moved from 72 to 76, expecting fireworks. The Wake Forest has done nothing but score. UNC went toe-to-toe with Notre Dame last week. A lot of question marks. We expected the UNC offense to come around with Sam Howell as a potential top overall pick, Heisman candidate. And like Tyler said, these teams are flip-flop. If UNC was undefeated at this point, they'd be talking about them in the playoff discussion. And Sam Hartman, he's still sitting around 60, 70 to 1 for the Heisman. He's putting up numbers. That's still open, we think. This could be a big springboard. That number could be cut in half. He puts up another 5-6 touchdown performance now. But this line, you look into this line a little bit and you say, number 9, newly fresh top 10 playoff committee team going on the road to an unranked, disappointing team, and they're underdogs. What? And let's move. They opened 4.5-point underdogs. Now it's under a field goal, which is probably what it should be. Close to a pick 'em. It's still kind of crazy that an undefeated power conference team will be looked at in such a way. And when you look at that line, you say, well, that doesn't make any sense. And if something doesn't make any sense, usually that's an alarm bell to say, what now? How do I look at this now? And you dig deeper into UNC and you look at how they've performed, how they've played. They've played a little bit better lately. They've been putting up points. They went toe-to-toe with Notre Dame, but they haven't really been able to put up back-to-back. They went toe-to-toe with Miami. Haven't really been able to put back-to-back solid, strong performances consistently, and that's been their downfall this year. So they played up at a huge game last week. They definitely were going for that Notre Dame win at Notre Dame. Do they come back home and see this almost little brother of North Carolina, Wake Forest Demon Deacons, and say, you're going to come to our house as your undefeated team and you're going to come take what we were supposed to have this year? Or are they going to lay a dud as they have half of the season and Wake Forest just proved that they're a better team? That's going to be the big question mark. This is a big handicap here. I ultimately think that the pressure is going to come to Wake Forest. I think this is going to be a game with fireworks. I think that number is going to continue to climb. It might touch 80 by the time we touch that. That's crazy, but it might touch that by the time we get to the game. And why not? UNC is putting no defense, putting up points. They're giving up 40, 50 points the last couple of weeks, 30, 40 points. Wake Forest has done nothing but score in the 40s and 50s. So why wouldn't we go over? It's a great live betting game. UNC comes out with an early touchdown. Wake Forest is 7-point underdogs. Take Wake Forest on the money line or take the points. Wake Forest comes down and scores. It's back to even. Wake Forest scores first. They're a favorite. UNC underdog. These types of games where there's a huge over-under, the live lines swing like crazy. You can get some value either way. Ultimately, I think we're going to see points. I do think UNC is going to come out with a nice field goal victory. So if you see that line teeter around 3, I think there's going to be value over 3 on UNC, value under 3 on Wake Forest. Not enough to touch. I think that I would touch the over. I would wait for a live play in game, and I just think the pressure is going to succumb to Wake Forest. I think the only play that you would have on this game is take a Sam Hartman Heisman ticket, best odds you can get before the game.
Great stuff. Moving on to the Big Ten, the Fighting Mel Tuckers and Sparty, fresh off their big, huge victory over the Wolverines and Big Brother at home, now go on the road to West Lafayette and Purdue. As we discussed before, Purdue has been in this spot before, having taken on Iowa after their huge win, and they knocked off the Hawkeyes. We talked about letdown spots earlier on this show. Is Purdue going to be the beneficiary of the Sparty letdown spot? Ian?
Yeah, it's another one of those lines you look at and you say, wait, what? Michigan State, they just beat Michigan. They're number 3 in the new college football playoff rankings. Now they're playing Purdue unranked, and they're only given 3 points, only given a field goal. How's that possible? And again, whenever you see a line that makes you think in question and think about how is that possible, you think easy money Michigan State. You want to take a little bit look deeper, and this is a traditional letdown spot. And if you're someone who believes that Michigan State is who they are, and they are the number 3 team. They are legitimate contender. Kenneth Walker is legitimately the best player in the country. Then you lay the 3 all day. If you think that they've been a team that's gotten kind of skated by, made some incredible plays, had a great player score 5 touchdowns against a huge in-state rival to come back and win a game, then you take Purdue on the money line. And a team that's newly number 3, unranked number 3, a team that just played out of their mind in the second half to come back and beat a huge rival in a huge win after all the turmoil that program went through a couple years ago, it's an easy letdown spot. This is why I look at the line and I say, question it. Person on the street's going to look at that line and say, how can I not take the number 3 team? I'm going to go straight to the other side, and I'm going to take Purdue. Purdue's already been a beneficiary against Iowa. I think they're going to be a beneficiary again. I think they'll be sitting, waiting, licking their chops and say, let's go, bring it on. And I don't think Michigan State's going to be able to back up their performance, and I think Michigan State goes down here.
Tyler.
A couple statistical notes, I guess. Purdue does have 9 wins against the number 1 team in the nation, most of any college football team. However, Michigan State's not number 1. Purdue struggles against defending the run. Wisconsin proved that, right? And if you take David Bell out of the game, Purdue's going to struggle on offense. And Michigan State has good cornerbacks. So with their cornerback play being able to shut down David Bell, I think Michigan State is going to be able to control the pace of this game. I haven't been entirely impressed with Michigan State. I think Michigan gave that game away. They were up 30-14, kind of gave that one away, stopped running the ball, started going 3 and out, let the crowd get into the game. That's Harbaugh's fault. Obviously, the players were on the field and Harbaugh wasn't, but there was also some questionable referee decisions in that game. Kenneth Walker, obviously great game, 5 touchdowns. Can't knock his performance. I think Michigan State is better than Purdue. I think Purdue had their moment of glory this year. I do think Michigan State can cover this number. They have bigger things to worry about this year than Purdue, so it could be a letdown spot for them. And that's part of the reason why we discussed it earlier, is to give you an idea of things to look for. Michigan State still has 2 big games on their schedule in Ohio State and Penn State. This Purdue game obviously means a lot, but it is in the Big Ten West, and it does not control their destiny. So keep that in mind. Not a good situation for Michigan State this week, but I think they get it done.
Awesome. The Line Movers Network is rolling along into SEC country. Auburn Tigers are going down to College Station to take on Texas A&M. Bo Nix, quarterback for Auburn, is a different player away from home. It's been well documented. Now they're going to Texas A&M. We all know Texas A&M had the huge rally the troop game, and they played unbelievable against Alabama. I've seen them play other games this year, and they didn't even look anything like that team that knocked off Alabama. Do they get up and play for Auburn, or do they look like the average team that's played the rest of their season when Alabama wasn't on the other side of the field? We'll start with Tyler. After Auburn started at about a 6.5-point dog. Public on Auburn, and we're down 2 ticks, 2 full points to about 4.5. So Texas A&M minus 4.5, a total of 50 in College Station. Tyler.
Yeah, College Station is a hard place to play. It is loud. Obviously, Alabama experienced that this year. I do not think Auburn is good on the road. I think that Auburn struggles on the road. Bo Nix historically struggles on the road in college. I don't know what it is, but 6.5 points is a lot of points here. And I think that's too many points for Auburn to be getting in an SEC game. I just don't know that Texas A&M is as good as their ranking. I don't know that they have enough playmakers on the field to score enough points to win by 7 versus Auburn. And I think their only weapon is Spiller at running back. I think Auburn can get this done. And I think Bo Nix needs to win a game on the road to really help his future stock in if he wants to make it to the NFL.
Great point. Ian.
Yeah, this Auburn, these two teams have been definitely better teams playing better. Auburn's certainly been a surprise in that SEC West, playing better. Great win last week over Ole Miss at home. Of course, I think the two best players on the field would be two running backs, Spiller, Tank Bigsby, and I think that is going to control the pace. And Tyler, you kind of alluded to it, not scoring points. I do like the under in this game. I do think defense are going to come to play. A&M is a very hard place to play. It's a very hard place to play offense. Bo Nix's going to have to prove it on the road. And, that's going to be the big thing. If Bo Nix can make a play or two, Auburn can pull the upset, or I guess pull the point spread upset. If he can't, we have to rely on their playmakers in the backfield to kind of control it, rely on their defense to maybe make a couple stops. But I think that this total is a little bit too high. I think playing this game will be the over. We've seen some defenses come to play in the SEC last couple of weeks, especially in some Auburn games. And that's why I would lean in this game. Should be a very close matchup, very tight matchup, physical. Both teams, playing for a lot of pride, especially right now, playing to finish out the season very strong.
Awesome. Big 12 game. Oklahoma State, fresh off the committee's number 11 ranking earlier this evening, is going to Morgantown to play West Virginia. Oklahoma State opened as a 3-point favorite, really stayed steady all week, still sitting as a 3-point favorite. A total here of 49. Cowboys and Mountaineers. Tyler.
Maybe another letdown spot here for West Virginia. I just don't think West Virginia is that good. They did score a lot of points against Iowa State last week, but Oklahoma State is very good defensively. They held Iowa State to 24, lost that game by 3. Oklahoma State, for me, I think they're better defensively and they're playing really good football this year. And West Virginia is susceptible to letting up a lot of points. And it's whether they have the offensive going or not, whether they're going to stick with you. And I don't think they're going to be able to hang with Oklahoma State because of that defense. So I'll take the 3 points, Oklahoma State. Or I'll lay the 3 points, Oklahoma State.
Yeah,
I totally agree with you on the potential letdown spot for West Virginia. They played up. They played a great game last week to get that win, that big upset over Iowa State. I don't think they can replicate that. Yeah, they've been very consistent this year. Oklahoma State's maybe been the best, most consistent team. That's a tough loss. That loss to Iowa State, that's going to happen. They got bigger. They still, I think, they have the goals in front of them. They got a lot of big games ahead of them. I think it starts now. I think 3 points a little too short for Oklahoma State. I don't think West Virginia could replicate that game. I think Oklahoma State's defense is much better. I like them by 2 scores plus, actually.
Great stuff. And those are the featured games on this week's Line Movers Network College Football Podcast. Again, check out our network for all the different sports. Our NFL guys, including Tyler Liddick, are red hot on their picks. So make sure you tune in and follow our NFL podcast. Once again, follow us on Twitter at @the_LM Network. Follow us along on our brand new, beautiful website, www.thelinemovers.net. Purchase all our new gear that we're showing off here tonight. Follow us along for all the different sports. Again, on our college football podcast, our experts tonight, Tyler Liddick, Ian Robbins. I'm David Dorman. Thank you again for joining us. Follow us again next week. We'll be back.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great week. Good luck.